They hate it. They hate the idea of making money when others are struggling. Yet, these are the exact people who complain they never get a chance, that the most profitable industries are monopolized. Am I supposed to build the next Apple or Amazon? They whine. I just laugh. You know how the top business minds are trained in the best US MBAs? There's one quote crystal clear in their textbooks. The easiest period to make money in the last 100 years, even with your eyes closed, was 1932. Why 1932? Because from 1929 to 1932, America was drowning in the Great Depression. Let me be blunt. When lawyers and doctors were begging on the streets, that was the time to make unimaginable fortunes. When everyone has no money, that's when we can get rich. This is the ultimate wealth redistribution, and if you seize this opportunity, your wealth and your social standing will be cemented for the next 100 years. It's why they say wealth doesn't last 3 generations. We've waited nearly a century, and finally, that chance is here. Back during the Great Depression, if you had a few $100s, you could walk into Harvard or MIT and easily recruit top talent to work for you. Unemployment was so high, simply having a job was a blessing. They'd work their hearts out. If your company failed, they'd be back looking for a new job, potentially without income for a year. Office rents were dirt cheap, sometimes even free for 6 months, because vacancy rates were through the roof. Most importantly, goods were in massive surplus, supply far exceeding demand. Products weren't selling. If you took inventory then, your costs were rock bottom. You could even take goods now and pay later, because factories had nowhere else to sell. In short, business and investment costs were at their lowest, almost zero. But here's the kicker. An economic depression isn't random. Even with everything dirt cheap, doing business wasn't easy. That's why 1932 was crucial, because that's when the Great Depression bottomed out and began its recovery. Now look at the last 4 years. The global economy has been weakened by the pandemic, rising interest rates, war, and monetary inflation. Do you feel like we're approaching that recovery phase? The pandemic is fading. The Federal Reserve might start cutting interest rates, which could stabilize other currencies. And wars might be ending. But these are all maybes. Even if they all happen, it only means a financial crisis might not erupt. It doesn't mean an economic recession won't hit. These are 2 completely different things. Most importantly, while we might think a recession isn't coming because someone will create new jobs, what are the world's top billionaires secretly doing? They're hoarding food, buying land, preparing for the coming recession by holding the 5 most critical assets. Because only when they own these assets can they use their cash to buy everything else at rock-bottom prices during the crisis and continue expanding their empires. Do you understand? So where's the risk? And what are these 5 new assets? Before we talk about making money in a recession, the most important thing is to learn how to protect yourself first. The wealth you've accumulated over the years shouldn't be vulnerable. This YouTube video might only be recommended to you once. If you want to seize this opportunity, if you don't want to miss out on the disruptive economic recovery trend, connect with me now. Follow my channel for free and hit the notification bell. If you're worried you'll listen, then lack the motivation to act, then hit the like button on this video. That way, it'll automatically save to your playlist, becoming part of your personal wealth. Why are modern-day prophets like the Indian prodigy, or even some who claim to be from the future, advising us to start hoarding food? First, don't confuse a financial crisis with an economic crisis. They are not the same. Simply put, a financial crisis occurs when the financial system collapses. Finance operates on leverage. Governments borrow, businesses borrow, people borrow to buy homes. But what happens if one day these borrowers can't repay? Banks can't recover their loans, and they run out of cash. When this happens, everyone rushes to withdraw money, leading not just to bank collapses, but the evaporation of immense wealth. Companies go bankrupt en masse. Millions become unemployed. Homes are foreclosed and sold for pennies. You can search for yourself to see the severity. You might think bank deposits are safe because the government will bail them out. But in 2008, Lehman Brothers actually went bankrupt because the government couldn't save everyone. Someone had to fall, and Lehman was the pawn. A financial crisis is terrifying, but it's still about currency. It can be solved by injecting money into the market. So, a financial crisis usually only lasts about 1 to 2 years. But an economic crisis is different. It happens when there's overproduction and goods can't be sold. Imagine ancient times when people were mostly farmers. There was no such thing as an economic crisis because land was limited. No matter how good the harvest, food always had buyers. Everyone needed to eat. Farming was stable, no unemployment, only death from overwork. But when technology advanced, machines emerged. Millions of jobs were replaced. Machines produce goods many times faster than humans, flooding the market while fewer and fewer people have jobs. No job means no money. No money means people tighten their belts, cut spending, only buying the cheapest things. Even when goods are at rock-bottom prices, some still can't afford them. Look at how America got rich during WWI. The US sold weapons to warring nations, making immense profits and kick-starting a strong economic recovery. Back then, if you worked in construction, building homes, roads, bridges, vehicles, you could strike it rich because war-torn infrastructure needed rebuilding. At the same time, Ford in the US invented the standardized assembly line. Before, building a car meant hiring skilled craftsmen who knew every step, from chassis to lights, steering wheel, tires. One car could take a month. 10 workers might build 10 cars a month. But Ford changed that. He broke down car production into small steps. Each worker focused on one task. 100 people just on chassis, 100 on tires. When all parts were ready, they were just assembled. This was the assembly line. This created millions of jobs. Before, car manufacturing needed a few skilled artisans. Now, anyone could participate. They didn't need to understand cars, just stand before a machine and do one specific task. If your job was smelting iron, you smelted iron. If it was forging steel, you forged steel. You only did one small step, not assembling the whole car. This not only cut costs, but also boosted productivity. While other countries produced 100 cars with 100 hard-to-find skilled workers, the US could produce 1,000 cars with the same number of workers. And they could hire 1,000, 10,000, even 100,000 workers to mass-produce cars. Not just cars, but many other US industries adopted this assembly line model. US goods were cheap and produced fast. While in other countries, buying a car could take years, in the US, it took a month. This led many to leave their old jobs to work in factories. But then, the problem emerged. When I invent a method that boosts productivity from 100 cars a month to 10,000 cars a month, but the market only has 1,000 people who want and can buy cars, then even if I produce 10,000, 9,000 are left in inventory. This is overproduction. Because goods are produced too fast and too much, when they don't sell, factories begin to fail in mass. Countless factories collapse like dominoes, leading to mass unemployment. Only then do workers realize that when unemployed, they know nothing else. In the factory, they only learned to forge iron or tighten screws. Before, even if unemployed, they had a trade. Now, they are no different from mindless machines. And the US entered its most severe depression in history. Streets were filled with the poor, bartering goods to survive. Back then, the US government still believed in free market competition, thinking the market would self-correct. This was true before. If one year's harvest was bountiful, farm prices would drop and goods would sell faster. But the problem now is, even if cars are mass-produced, people already have cars. No one wants to buy more. Even if car companies sell at a loss, no one buys. As a result, countless factories can't hold on, closing one after another, leading to mass layoffs. Even those with money choose to hold on to it instead of spending. Do you see this repeating today? Many countries are seeing sharp housing price adjustments. In China, home prices are getting cheaper, but people still can't afford them. Or even if they have money, they don't dare to buy. Conversely, the number of people choosing to rent is increasing. The car market is similar. Fewer and fewer people are buying cars. Luxury car brands worldwide are constantly cutting prices, while the used car market stagnates. Many dealerships buy used cars but can't sell them for months, incurring huge losses. But conversely, more and more people are rushing to buy gold and silver. They have money to spend, but they don't want to spend it. They keep it in hand. Most importantly, fewer and fewer people want to have children. The aging population problem is getting more severe. In this situation, doing business is getting harder. Many large corporations worldwide have conducted mass layoffs. Meanwhile, prices and inflation continue to soar. Medical and education costs are also getting more expensive. The strange thing is that from the beginning of 2024 until now, whether it's US stocks, gold, or even Bitcoin, they've all seen multiple strong rallies. Why? Because before the economy enters a recession or even a Great Depression, the prices of these assets often see a few strong surges, especially US stocks. And the profits from these surges will become the capital to help us buy at the bottom when the crisis hits. For us, there's no need to study news analysis, financial reports, or complex macro information. The principle of investing is actually very simple. The more you learn, the more easily you get confused. You just need to know how to buy when prices are trending strongly upwards with the lowest risk, and know how to cut losses promptly when you're wrong. Most importantly, find yourself a real mentor with experience and results. When people stopped spending money, one figure emerged and changed the game: John Maynard Keynes. I spent 4 years in college studying him. Keynes told the then US president that when people don't want to spend money, only holding cash, the government needs to intervene. For example, the government can issue bonds to borrow money from the public. Once they have money, the government will spend on behalf of the people, investing in public works like landmarks, infrastructure, or bailing out failing businesses. This was the cure for the Great Depression, and because the new president at the time dared to follow through, he continuously borrowed money to invest in the economy, hiring legions of workers to plant trees to prevent floods, build roads, homes, airports, hospitals, schools, etc. This was the easiest way to make money in 1932. Back then, if you went into business, anything you did could make money. If you didn't know what business to do, the government would tell you. For example, they'd say, "Can you help me build a school?" Not only that, the government actively awarded projects to you and even paid in advance. At that time, because the crisis had just ended, hiring labor and renting offices were incredibly cheap, sometimes even free. This policy was essentially the government giving money to the people. The US borrowed money from everyone, then transferred it to those who dared to start businesses. These entrepreneurs then hired workers, creating jobs for others. As a result, unemployment immediately halved, GDP doubled, and crime and riots sharply decreased. Because everyone had a job, no one worried about the future anymore. At that point, people were no longer afraid and were willing to spend again. Those who dared to start businesses then became today's top billionaires. That new president was Franklin D. Roosevelt, who later became the most beloved president in US history. One of the most important things he did was to transfer the risk of the Great Depression to other countries. Immediately upon taking office, he abolished the gold standard. Previously, the US Treasury had to hold gold to back the dollar. People could exchange US dollars for gold at the Treasury. But Roosevelt completely eliminated this policy. From then on, the US dollar could no longer be converted into gold at the Treasury. This meant the US could print as much money as it wanted. Thanks to this, whenever the US economy faced problems, the government could print money, lend to itself, and spend to solve the issues. Meanwhile, other countries still needed US dollars to buy oil, gold, and for international transactions. So they were forced to borrow dollars from the US to do business. It was thanks to this that the dollar officially became the dominant currency, and the US became the only superpower recognized by the entire world. Unlike Britain, the US didn't need to invade territories or expand colonies by force. That method was costly, exhausting, and outdated. Instead, the US used capital to restructure the global economy, divide benefits, and make the whole world dependent on them. This is financial colonialism, a type of invasion and exploitation that doesn't require weapons. So how does this mechanism work? First, the US established the Federal Reserve, transforming it into the global financial center. They continuously printed money and flooded dollars across the world, while other countries took on the role of production. Europe was responsible for inventions and technological innovation. Africa and the Middle East supplied natural resources. Southeast Asia became the world's factory, producing goods. When these countries became wealthy through exports and US dollars flooded their markets, the US used the Fed's monetary policies to suck dollars back into the country. For example, they used strategies of raising or lowering interest rates, or leveraging military power to manipulate the global economy, pushing other countries into crisis. When the economies of these nations collapsed, the US used its appreciated dollars to buy devalued assets abroad. For instance, they bought top Japanese trading corporations and acquired major South Korean conglomerates. In fact, most large companies worldwide have participation from major US financial corporations. So, while other countries work day and night, build factories, extract resources, and make money, in the end, it's all enriching the US financial elite. This is how the US transferred the risk of the Great Depression to the rest of the world. The entire world is gradually coming under its influence, and this is why I say the Great Depression could recur after 100 years. Currently, you can easily see many countries facing aging population problems. Japan, for example, has more and more people unwilling to have children, or even to date. Or South Korea, where many have adopted a lying flat lifestyle. Just surviving is enough. What's the point of making money when you can't afford a house or a car? And if you can afford it, you have to borrow, becoming a slave to US financial corporations, working endlessly to repay debt. You can clearly see that in many countries, like China, houses are built but no one buys them. In Germany, many cars are produced but no one buys them. Before, only the rich could own one, but now luxury car models are increasingly common. Just recently, I saw an A250 cruise by and I couldn't help but laugh. This shows that the global economy is stagnating and overproduction is gradually emerging. The US once had an absolute advantage due to the dollar because the whole world needed it to buy oil. But now, global industry has developed to saturation. Demand for oil has stabilized, even tending to decrease. Moreover, oil no longer necessarily has to be bought with US dollars. Therefore, the US is like a hamster on a wheel that cannot stop. They are forced to create a new technological revolution to keep the world using US dollars to buy their technology. Look back at the internet revolution. It wiped out countless traditional industries, and the US spearheaded this trend, giving birth to monopolistic giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. Other countries, if they didn't want to fall behind technologically or be looked down upon by the world, were forced to pay tuition fees to the US to learn new technology. But now the whole world has learned what needs to be learned. Who doesn't know how to use the internet? Who doesn't know how to watch YouTube anymore? That's why the US needs to drive a new technological revolution. That is, artificial intelligence. This technology must be far superior to the rest of the world so that other countries are forced to come to the US to learn and pay in US dollars. Therefore, as soon as the concept of AI emerged, all AI-related stocks exploded, like Nvidia. Making money is certainly fun, but the more you make, the more cautious you must be. Because this situation is increasingly similar to the dot-com bubble of the past. Remember those years? Any company related to new technology would see its stock price soar ridiculously. It's the same now. If it's related to AI, the stock price flies so high you can't see its tail. But has AI truly been fully applied in practice? Has the AI era truly arrived? Look back at NFTs, which once caused a sensation but are now rarely mentioned. Therefore, I believe AI will certainly have practical applications in the future, but currently it is still just a concept floating in the air. And is the capital flowing in now too early? Is this really a planned preparation or simply a trick to push stock prices high, attract retail investors worldwide, and then dump them for profit? The stock market today is nothing short of an ATM, and very few people realize that Bill Gates has quietly sold off his company shares for a long time. Not just him, but Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and many others have also quietly reduced their stock holdings while secretly investing in 5 critical assets during the crisis. The first asset is land. Look at what Bill Gates has done in recent years. He has acquired an enormous amount of land, mostly agricultural, totaling 260,000 acres. To put that in perspective, that's the equivalent of 10 Paris cities or 2 New York cities combined. Jeff Bezos is no slouch either, buying 420,000 acres of land. US media mogul Ted Turner owns 2 million acres. And Mark Zuckerberg, instead of pouring money into the metaverse, spent $2 billion building something called the Doomsday Fortress. Even the company behind ChatGPT, after making their first huge profits, didn't continue pouring money into AI research. They bought a large farm. Why are these tech magnates rushing to hoard land? Are they planning to raise pigs? We don't need to discuss conspiracy theories. Just look at the actual data. Every time the US stock market collapses, like the 2008 financial crisis, when US stocks lost nearly 50% of their value, the US agricultural land price index surged by 17%. Agricultural land can be rented, sold, or farmed. In terms of returns over the past 20 years, agricultural land in the US hasn't lagged behind the stock market. And in terms of volatility, it's much more stable. That's why many entrepreneurs I know have gone to the US to buy land. More importantly, agricultural land can be used to grow food. This brings us to the second asset, food. During a Great Depression, the biggest use of agricultural land is food production. You might wonder, it's modern society. Will there really be famine? Even beggars don't starve to death. But when an economic recession hits, compounded by the effects of war, the most expensive thing will be food. Look at the current global situation. Wars have dragged on for a while. Many countries have participated. You just might not pay attention because you think it doesn't concern you. This is why the US financial elite are rushing to hoard land on a massive scale. What does this signal about the future? Perhaps only those in the know truly understand. The third asset that many countries worldwide are actively buying is gold and silver. These are assets I always prioritize holding. Whenever I make profits in US dollars in the stock market, I always allocate a portion to convert into gold or silver. The reason is simple. If the US dollar or the entire financial system collapses, the paper money we hold will become worthless. And then the world will only use one type of currency, the currency created by God, gold and silver. I've mentioned this in previous analyses. As long as I have gold, I can exchange it for any currency in the world, but not every currency can be exchanged for gold. Over hundreds of years, countless currencies have disappeared. Only gold has endured. Even if humanity goes extinct, gold will still be here. If you, like me, want to protect your assets or have enough resources to seize opportunities to buy cheap assets during a Great Depression, then gold is definitely the most worthwhile asset to buy. Anyone can buy it. And when I buy gold, I have no intention of selling it. The fourth asset I choose is public currency, meaning Bitcoin. In the past year, BlackRock, Fidelity, and other ETFs, along with politicians and presidents, have been quietly buying Bitcoin every day, unnoticed by you. What did they know that we don't? Many people ask me now, what's worth investing in recently? Are there any money-making opportunities? If I tell you, I'm actually harming you. Why? Look at legendary investor Warren Buffett. He's much better than me, right? Every year, he publicly discloses his stock portfolio. So you just buy what he buys, right? But what's the reality? For example, when Buffett says he likes Apple stock, the Apple stock price immediately skyrockets. You see that and jump in to buy. But the very next day or a few days later, the price drops and you lose money. Did Buffett trick you? Should you sell to cut losses? If you sell, the price goes back up. Do you dare to buy again? The problem is you only know one side, not the other. You only want others to spoon feed you, but you don't know how to pick up food yourself. Once no one spoon-feeds you anymore, you'll starve. Moreover, the food others spoon-feed you might not be what you truly need. Stocks are the same. Why can others make money, but when it's your turn, you lose? It's not because there's something wrong with the stock, but because you absolutely don't have a complete trading system. Even if you discover a potential stock, you don't know what to do next. You don't know when to buy, when to sell, how much to buy, how much to sell. In the end, you still lose money. You might even lose confidence because you don't understand what you're doing. When stock prices have risen very high, why do some people still buy in, and then the price doubles again? But you can't understand. Even if someone gives you a specific number, you wouldn't dare to invest accordingly. As a result, you still make nothing, just waste time, or worse, lose money. Ultimately, you might even hate me, blaming me for harming you. So you must not only know the result, but also understand the reason behind it. Previously, Bitcoin and gold futures were just speculative tools for me, like stocks. But recently, I've considered holding Bitcoin long-term. Not because I believe Bitcoin will continue to rise sharply, but because I believe that one day, when an economic crisis occurs, Bitcoin could become a safe haven asset, even more valuable than gold and silver, because it's the currency of the people. So, when deciding to hold an asset long-term, I always consider whether it can be easily converted. You can see that Elon Musk is also a Bitcoin supporter. Many countries now accept Bitcoin transactions, but there are still many who believe Bitcoin is just a scam with no real value. The problem is, if this were truly a scam, it would have existed since 2018, over 10 years, and its value would still be continuously increasing. If, over the past 10+ years, you were scammed by Bitcoin, meaning you bought it, you might be a millionaire by now. But if you weren't scammed all that time and still held the great US dollar, you'd see your assets have depreciated significantly. Previously, with $1 million, you could buy a mansion in a wealthy New York neighborhood, but now that money might only buy a toilet in that mansion. And as for the final asset, I'll temporarily call it an asset because of its protective capabilities, but it might only be legal to own in the US: guns. If you've ever been to the US, just walk into any convenience store, and you'll see a group of muscular young people casually taking items and putting them in their bags, then slowly walking to the cashier, smiling, and immediately running away. Even if the police are standing right outside, they don't chase. Why? Because this form of free shopping is almost legalized now. As long as the value of the stolen goods is under $950, it's at most considered a misdemeanor. Arresting them or not makes no difference, and if they're arrested, prisons are overcrowded and the state has to feed them. That's why countless thieves immediately sell stolen goods on Amazon or other online platforms to make money. When the economy is in a severe recession, this situation will undoubtedly become even more serious. So, if you live in the US, owning a gun might be essential. My partner and I used to strongly object, thinking guns were only tools of crime. But after rethinking, I realized that if someone wants to kill, they can use anything as a weapon. But if you need to protect yourself in situations where the power imbalance is too great, perhaps only a gun can give you a chance to defend yourself. In summary, if you want to protect your assets during a Great Depression, we must prepare these 5 types of assets in advance. Only then will our money not be invisibly eroded. When the recession truly hits, these assets will appreciate sharply, giving us enough financial leverage to buy back core assets that are being fire-sold at rock-bottom prices. I've shared free knowledge on how to get rich, do business, invest, and achieve financial freedom. If you don't want to miss out, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with more people. I sincerely wish all of you achieve financial freedom soon. If, in what I've shared today, you found even 1 or 2 useful insights that help you improve your life, I'm content.